I should have known something was wrong when Jovie spent 40 minutes getting ready for a neighborhood barbecue. She never cared that much about impressing the Hendersons or their circle of wine mom friends and tech bro husbands. But there she was, trying on her third outfit while I sat on our bed, watching the rain streak down the windows. "You sure you want to go to this thing?" I asked, adjusting my collar. "Weather's getting nasty." "It's just drizzle, Kellan." She smoothed her dress, the black one that made her look 10 years younger. "Besides, Ava specifically invited us. It would be rude not to show." Ava Henderson. The self-appointed queen of Maple Ridge Estates, our little slice of suburban paradise nestled in the Pacific Northwest hills. If there was gossip to spread or drama to orchestrate, Ava was usually at the center of it. The fact that she'd gone out of her way to invite us should have been my first warning. I'm a project manager for a construction company, nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps our 2 kids fed. Jovie works in marketing for a tech startup downtown. We're solidly middle class, the kind of people who buy generic cereal and argue about whether we can afford a vacation this year. Not exactly Ava's usual crowd. "All right," I said, grabbing my jacket. "But if this turns into one of those parties where everyone talks about their Tesla payments, I'm calling Eli to come rescue me." Jovie laughed, but it sounded forced. "You're so dramatic. It's just neighbors having fun." The Hendersons lived 3 blocks over in one of the newer developments where the houses cost twice what ours did. Their place was already packed when we arrived, cars lining both sides of the street despite the drizzle that had turned into a steady rain. I recognized most of the vehicles: the Johnsons' BMW, the Patel's Lexus, Owen Martinez's ridiculous red sports car that he'd been showing off around the neighborhood for the past month. Owen. Now, there was a piece of work. 32, unmarried, worked remotely for some tech company in California. The kind of guy who wore designer athleisure to the grocery store and posted gym selfies on social media. He'd moved into the rental on Pine Street 6 weeks ago and had already made himself the center of attention at every neighborhood gathering. "There's Owen's car," Jovie said, and I swear I heard something different in her voice. Excitement? Anticipation? "Great," I muttered. "Maybe he'll tell us about his CrossFit routine again." Inside, the Henderson house buzzed with conversation and laughter. Ava had gone all out. Catered appetizers, a full bar setup, mood lighting that made everyone look younger and more attractive. I grabbed a drink and found myself gravitating toward Eli Patterson, my best friend since college and the only other person at this party who worked with his hands for a living. "Fancy spread," Eli said, nursing a craft cocktail that probably cost more than our usual pizza nights. "Think Ava's trying to impress someone?" "Probably everyone," I replied, scanning the room. Jovie had already disappeared into the crowd, her laugh carrying over the music as she chatted with a group near the kitchen island. Owen stood at the center of the group, gesturing animatedly as he told some story that had everyone hanging on his words. "Your wife seems to be enjoying herself," Eli observed. I watched Jovie touch Owen's arm as she laughed at whatever he'd said. "Yeah, she's been looking forward to this all week." The party continued normally for the first hour. I made small talk with neighbors, complimented Ava on her renovated kitchen, and tried to ignore the way Jovie kept gravitating toward Owen's orbit. Every time I looked over, she was nearby, refilling her drink when he refilled his, laughing at his jokes, finding excuses to brush past him. It was pathetic, really, and obvious, at least to me. Around 10 o'clock, Ava called for everyone's attention. She stood on her fireplace hearth, wine glass in hand, beaming at her captive audience. "Before the night gets too late," she announced, "I thought we could try something fun, something to shake up the usual party routine." A murmur of interest rippled through the crowd. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain pattering against the windows. "It's called a blind partner swap," Ava continued, producing a wicker basket from behind the bar. "Everyone puts their phone in the basket, draws a number, and gets paired up for the next hour. No spouses, no choosing, just random fun with someone new. The room erupted in nervous laughter and excited chatter. Some people immediately started reaching for their phones. Others, like me, stayed frozen in place. "Come on, everyone," Ava urged. "It's just for an hour. Think of it as adult musical chairs." I looked around for Jovie and found her near the kitchen, her eyes bright with something I couldn't quite identify. She was already holding her phone. "Jovie," I called out, pushing through the crowd toward her. "We should probably head home soon. The babysitter—" "Oh, lighten up, Kellan," she said, not even looking at me. "Sarah's fine until midnight. This sounds like fun." "Fun?" I lowered my voice. "You want to pair up with some random guy for an hour?" "It's not like that," she said, but her cheeks were flushed. "It's just socializing, meeting new people. We know everyone here." "Not really." She glanced toward Owen, who was already dropping his phone into Ava's basket. "Not well, anyway." I grabbed her wrist gently. "Jovie, this is crazy. Let's just go home." She pulled away, harder than necessary. "Stop being such a stick in the mud. For once in your life, just go with the flow." Before I could respond, she'd walked over to Ava and dropped her phone into the basket. The sound of it hitting the other devices felt like a hammer blow to my chest. Ava handed out colored wristbands, red, blue, green, yellow, and I watched in growing horror as Jovie accepted a blue one. Around the room, other couples were having similar conversations. Some laughed it off and participated together. Others, like the Johnsons, politely declined and moved toward the door. I should have followed them. Instead, I stood there like an idiot, watching my wife of 12 years strap a blue wristband around her wrist while scanning the room for whoever had the matching color. Owen raised his hand, showing off his own blue band. Of course. "Looks like we're partners," he said to Jovie, his smile wide and predatory. "Should we find somewhere quieter to talk?" Jovie giggled, actually giggled, like she was 18 again. "Lead the way." I watched them walk toward the sliding glass doors that led to the Hendersons' covered patio and backyard. The rain had intensified, drumming against the roof and windows, but the patio was enclosed and heated. Private. I checked the wall clock above the mantel, 10:13 p.m. "You okay, man?" Eli appeared at my elbow, concern creasing his face. "Fine," I lied. "Just fine." But I wasn't fine. I was standing in a room full of people, watching my wife disappear into the night with another man, and everyone was acting like this was perfectly normal, like it was just a game. Maybe it was just a game to them, but games have rules, and rules can be documented. I pulled out my phone and did what I do best. I started managing the situation like a project. First, I walked over to Ava's refrigerator, where she'd posted a handwritten list of rules for her little game. I photographed them carefully. Blind partner swap rules. 1. Participants must surrender phones for 1 hour. Matching wristbands indicate partnerships. 3. Partners should spend time getting to know each other. 4. No spouse interference during the hour. 5. Have fun and keep an open mind. Next, I found the sign-in sheet Ava had used to track who was participating. She'd left it on the kitchen counter, and I photographed that too, making sure to capture the timestamp from my phone's camera. Finally, I took pictures of the wristband distribution, who had what color, who was paired with whom. The evidence was mounting, but I needed more. I needed witnesses. People who could testify that my wife had voluntarily participated in this ridiculous game and left with another man while intoxicated, because Jovie was definitely intoxicated. I'd watched her consume 3 glasses of wine and at least 2 of Ava's signature cocktails. She was in no condition to make rational decisions, and everyone at this party could see it. I found a quiet corner near the front hall and made a phone call. "Frank, it's Kellan. I'm sorry to bother you so late, but I need you and Marcia to come to an address I'm going to give you." Frank Morrison, my father-in-law, was a retired police sergeant who'd never particularly liked me but had always been protective of his daughter. If anyone could cut through Jovie's nonsense and make her see reason, it was her old man. "What's wrong?" Frank's voice was instantly alert. "Is Jovie hurt?" She's made some poor choices tonight. She's intoxicated and left with a stranger at a party. I think she needs her parents right now." I gave him the Hendersons' address and asked him to bring Jovie's identification and car keys from our house. He had a spare set for emergencies. Then I hung up and waited. The next 45 minutes felt like hours. I made small talk with other guests, helped Ava clean up some spilled appetizers, and kept one eye on the patio doors. Occasionally, I could see shadows moving outside, silhouettes pressed close together in the dim lighting. My stomach churned, but I forced myself to stay calm, to document everything, to build my case. At 11:02 p.m., the front door opened and Frank and Marcia Morrison walked in, shaking rain from their coats. They looked around the party with obvious disapproval, Frank taking in the scattered phones, the wristbands, the general atmosphere of manufactured chaos. "Where is she?" Marcia asked, her voice tight with worry. I pointed toward the patio doors. "She's been out there for almost an hour with a man named Owen Martinez. They're part of some game the host organized." Frank's face darkened. "What kind of game?" I showed him the photos on my phone, the rules, the sign-in sheet, the wristband pairings. His expression grew more thunderous with each image. "She volunteered for this?" Marcia whispered. "Insisted on it," I confirmed. "I tried to talk her out of it." At that moment, the patio doors slid open and Jovie stumbled back inside, followed closely by Owen. Her hair was mussed, her lipstick smeared, and her dress was wrinkled in ways that made my imagination run wild. She was laughing at something Owen had whispered in her ear, completely oblivious to the fact that her parents were standing 10 feet away. Then she saw them. The laughter stopped, the color drained from her face. She swayed slightly, whether from the drinks or the shock I couldn't tell. "Mom? Dad? What are you doing here?" Frank stepped forward, his cop instincts taking over. "We're here because your husband called us. He was concerned about your activities tonight." Jovie's eyes darted between her parents and me, confusion and anger warring on her face. "Kellan, what did you do?" "I documented everything," I said calmly, holding up my phone. "The game rules, the participants, the timeline, everything." Owen, to his credit, tried to defuse the situation. "Hey, look, this is all just a misunderstanding. We were just talking." "At 11 p.m., in the rain, for an hour." Frank's voice could have cut glass. "While my daughter is clearly intoxicated?" "Dad, you're embarrassing me," Jovie hissed, but there was no conviction in her voice. "You're embarrassing yourself," Marcia replied sharply. "Look at you. Look at how you're acting." The party around us had gone quiet. Everyone was staring now, phones appearing as people started recording what was clearly going to be neighborhood gossip for months to come. I pulled Jovie's car keys from Frank's hand and set them on the nearest table. "I'm going home," I announced, to no one in particular. "Jovie, your parents will make sure you get there safely. We'll talk in the morning." "Kellan, wait." But I was already walking toward the door, Eli falling into step beside me. Behind us, I could hear Marcia's voice rising as she began what sounded like a lecture that had been building for years. "You sure about this, man?" Eli asked as we reached our cars. I looked back at the Henderson house, where warm light spilled from every window and the sound of raised voices carried over the rain. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." I spent the night in our guest room, staring at the ceiling and listening to rain hammer the roof. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jovie's face when she walked back inside, flushed, disheveled, guilty as sin. The way Owen had whispered in her ear. The way she'd giggled like a teenager. 12 years of marriage, 2 kids, a mortgage we'd struggled to qualify for. All of it apparently worth less than an hour with some smooth-talking stranger. Around 6 a.m., I heard the front door open. Footsteps in the hallway, careful and quiet. The master bedroom door closing with a soft click. I waited another hour before getting up, giving Jovie time to shower and hopefully sober up completely. When I finally emerged from the guest room, I found her in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee and looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Kellan. She looked up as I entered, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. We need to talk. Yes, we do. I poured my own coffee, noting how my hands stayed perfectly steady. Project manager training, stay calm under pressure, deal with facts, not emotions. But first, I want to know if you remember everything that happened last night. She flinched. I wasn't that intoxicated. You had at least 5 drinks that I counted. You could barely walk straight when you came back inside. I was fine. Your parents didn't think so. Neither did half the party. Jovie set down her mug harder than necessary. You had no right to call them. No right to humiliate me like that. Humiliate you? I stared at her in disbelief. Jovie, you disappeared with another man for an hour at a neighborhood party, while everyone we know watched. I didn't humiliate you. You did that yourself. It was just a game, Kellan. A stupid party game. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. I repeated the words slowly, letting them hang in the air between us. You spent an hour alone with Owen Martinez, came back looking like you'd been wrestling in the rain, and you're telling me nothing happened. We talked. That's all. About what? She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything I needed to know. Just things, life, work, normal conversation. For an hour, in the rain, while you were intoxicated, and I was inside worrying about you. You're overreacting. Those 2 words, the same ones she'd used last night, hit me like a physical blow. I'd heard them before, whenever I questioned her late nights at work, her new interest in fitness, her suddenly active social media presence. Always, I was overreacting. Show me your phone, I said quietly. What? Your phone. Show me your messages with Owen. Her face went pale. Kellan, that's crazy. I'm not showing you my private messages. Private messages with the man you spent last night with? It's not like that. Then show me. We stared at each other across the kitchen table, 12 years of marriage hanging in the balance. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, and weak morning sunlight filtered through the windows. I can't do this right now, Jovie said finally. I have a headache and you're being completely unreasonable. She stood up and walked toward the stairs, but I wasn't done. I'm filing for separation this morning. She stopped, her hand on the banister. Your what? Legal separation. I'm going to see David Brennan at 9 a.m. David was our family lawyer, the one who'd handled our wills and the house purchase. A good man, thorough and discreet. Kellan, you can't be serious. I have photos of the game rules, timestamps, witness statements from your parents and at least 6 other people who saw you leave with Owen. I have documentation of your intoxication and your voluntary participation in what was essentially a spouse-swapping event. It wasn't spouse-swapping. What would you call it? She turned around, and for the first time since I'd known her, Jovie looked genuinely frightened. It was a mistake, a stupid, harmless mistake. Harmless? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Jovie, you've destroyed our reputation in this neighborhood. You've humiliated our children. What happens when Tommy and Sarah find out their friends' parents were all talking about this? You've broken the trust in our marriage, possibly permanently. How is any of that harmless? Nobody has to know. Everyone already knows. Ava Henderson doesn't keep secrets, and neither do any of her friends. By noon today, this story will be all over Maple Ridge Estates. By tonight, it'll be on the school parent Facebook groups. The truth of that statement hit her like a slap. I could see it in her eyes, the realization that this wasn't something she could laugh off or explain away. What do you want from me? She whispered. I want you to be honest. For once in our marriage, just tell me the truth." She sat back down, her hands shaking slightly as she reached for her coffee. "Owen and I have been talking. Just talking. He's new to the area, and I was being friendly." "How friendly?" "We've texted a few times, about neighborhood stuff, local recommendations." "Show me." "Kellan, show me the texts, Jovie, right now." She pulled out her phone with obvious reluctance, scrolled through her messages, and handed it to me. I read through the conversation thread with Owen Martinez, and with each message, my heart sank further. The text started innocently enough: welcome to the neighborhood, recommendations for local restaurants, that sort of thing. But they quickly evolved into something else entirely. Flirty comments about his workouts, compliments on his social media posts, late-night messages that had nothing to do with neighborhood business. And then, from 3 days ago, "Owen, looking forward to Ava's party. Hope we get a chance to really talk." Jovie, "Me too. Kellan will probably want to leave early like always." Owen, "Maybe we can find a way to spend some time together. Away from the crowd." Jovie, "That sounds nice. I could use some adult conversation for once." I read the exchange twice, then looked up at my wife. "Adult conversation? It's not what you think. What I think is that you planned this. You and Owen arranged to spend time together at that party, and Ava's stupid game gave you the perfect excuse. That's not... Did you know about the game beforehand?" She hesitated again. Another telling pause. "Ava might have mentioned something." "When?" "A few days ago, when she invited us." The pieces clicked into place. Ava's specific invitation, Jovie's excitement about the party, her careful attention to her appearance, the way she'd immediately volunteered for the game. "You planned this," I said, more to myself than to her. "You actually planned to spend the evening with another man." "Kellan, please, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. You've been having an emotional affair with Owen Martinez, and last night you decided to make it physical." "Nothing physical happened." "I don't believe you." The words hung between us like a blade. Jovie started crying. Real tears, not the manipulative kind she sometimes used to get her way. "I never meant for this to happen," she sobbed. I was lonely, Kellan. You work all the time, and when you're home, you're tired or stressed or thinking about the next project. Owen made me feel interesting again, attractive, like I was worth talking to. So this is my fault? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying I made a terrible mistake, and I want to fix it. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our backyard where the kids' swing set sat empty in the weak morning light. Tommy and Sarah were spending the weekend with my parents, thank God. They didn't need to witness this. You can't fix this, Jovie, not with apologies or tears or promises to do better. You crossed a line last night that can't be uncrossed. Everyone makes mistakes. Not everyone, and not like this. I turned back to face her. I'm going to see David at 9. I'm filing for legal separation and requesting primary custody of the kids. You can't take my children away from me. I can and I will. You made a choice last night, and choices have consequences. She was crying harder now, mascara running down her cheeks in dark streaks. What do I have to do? How do I make this right? You can't. That's what you don't understand, Jovie. Some things can't be fixed. Some mistakes are permanent. I walked toward the stairs, then paused. I'll be staying in the guest room until I can find an apartment. You can explain to the kids why Daddy doesn't live here anymore when they get back tomorrow. Kellan, please! But I was already climbing the stairs, my phone in my hand, David Brennan's number on the screen. The morning was just getting started, and I had work to do. David Brennan's office occupied the second floor of a renovated Victorian house in downtown Millbrook, our county seat. I'd been there twice before, once for our wills, once when we bought the house. Both times Jovie had been with me, holding my hand and making jokes about David's collection of antique law books. This time, I sat alone in his waiting room, watching rain streak down the tall windows and reviewing the photos on my phone. The evidence I'd gathered at the party looked even more damning in the harsh light of morning. Kellan? David appeared in his office doorway at exactly 9 a.m. He was a small, precise man in his 50s, with silver hair and the kind of steady demeanor that made clients trust him instantly. "Come on in." His office hadn't changed, still lined floor to ceiling with those antique law books, still dominated by a massive oak desk that had probably been there since the building was constructed. David gestured for me to sit in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. "I have to say I was surprised by your call this morning. You and Jovie always seemed like one of the solid couples." "So did I replied. "Until last night." I walked him through the entire evening, the party, the game, Jovie's willing participation, her disappearance with Owen, the state she was in when she returned. David took notes on a yellow legal pad, occasionally asking for clarification or additional details. "And you have photographic evidence?" I handed him my phone. He scrolled through the images methodically, the game rules, the sign-in sheet, the wristband assignments, the timestamps. "This is thorough," he said approvingly. "Very thorough. You documented everything in real time?" "I'm a project manager. Documentation is what I do." "And you have witnesses?" "Jovie's parents saw her condition when she returned. They can testify that she was intoxicated and disheveled. At least 6 other party guests witnessed her leaving with Owen and staying gone for over an hour." David set down my phone and leaned back in his chair. "Kellan, I have to ask, are you sure you want to do this? Separation is a big step, and it sounds like alcohol was a factor in your wife's decision-making last night." "It wasn't just last night." I told him about the text messages, the pattern of late nights and secretive behavior, the way Jovie had planned to spend time with Owen at the party. "This has been building for weeks, maybe months. Last night was just when it became public." David nodded slowly. "In that case, we have several options. Washington is a no-fault divorce state, which means we don't need to prove adultery or abandonment. But having documentation of inappropriate behavior can help with custody arrangements and asset division. I want primary custody of Tommy and Sarah. Based on what you've told me, that's a reasonable request. A judge will look favorably on the parent who demonstrates stability and good judgment." We spent the next hour going over the details. David would file for legal separation that afternoon, citing irreconcilable differences and requesting primary custody of the children. He'd also request that Jovie undergo counseling for alcohol abuse and provide supervised visitation until she could demonstrate sobriety. "This is going to get ugly," David warned as I prepared to leave. "Jovie will likely hire her own attorney and they'll try to paint you as controlling or vindictive. Are you prepared for that?" "I'm prepared for whatever comes next." But as I walked back to my truck, I wondered if that was really true. 12 years of marriage doesn't end easily, even when your wife has made it impossible to continue. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment I thought it might be Jovie, but the number was unfamiliar. "Unknown. Stay out of my business or you'll regret it." I stared at the message, then laughed out loud. Owen Martinez trying to intimidate me via text. The guy had some nerve. I screenshotted the message and forwarded it to David with a note. More evidence for the file. Then I drove to work, where I had a bridge renovation project to manage and a crew of guys who didn't care about my personal drama. Sometimes normal work was exactly what you needed, but normal work didn't last long. Around lunchtime, my phone started buzzing with calls and messages. Word was spreading through the neighborhood faster than I'd anticipated. The first call was from Nancy Peterson, who lived 2 houses down from us. "Kellan, I just wanted you to know that Bill and I saw what happened last night, and we think you handled it perfectly. Jovie was completely out of line." The second was from Mike Chen, whose wife had been at the party. "Dude, Linda told me about the whole thing. That's rough, man. If you need anything, a place to stay, someone to talk to, just call. By mid-afternoon, I'd received a dozen similar calls. The neighborhood was taking sides, and surprisingly, most people seemed to be on mine. The only negative response came from Ava Henderson herself, who called around 3 p.m. sounding defensive and angry. "Kellan, I think you completely overreacted last night. It was just a harmless party game, and you turned it into a huge drama." "Ava, my wife left with another man for over an hour while she was intoxicated. How exactly was I supposed to react?" "You could have been more understanding, more mature about it." "Mature?" I couldn't help laughing. "You organized a spouse-swapping party and you're lecturing me about maturity?" "It wasn't spouse-swapping. It was exactly what it was, Ava. And now the whole neighborhood knows what kind of parties you throw." She hung up on me, but I didn't care. Ava Henderson's opinion was the least of my concerns. What did concern me was the message I received around 4 p.m. from an unknown email address. Subject: Your wife Kellan. You should know that Jovie and Owen have been meeting for coffee several times over the past month. I saw them at Starbucks on Pine Street last Tuesday, and they looked very cozy. Thought you should know. A concerned neighbor, I forwarded the email to David immediately. More evidence for the file. By the time I got home that evening, Jovie was gone. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "Kellan, I'm staying with my parents for a few days. I think we both need some space to cool down and think about this rationally. I love you and I love our family. I hope we can work through this. J." I crumpled up the note and threw it in the trash. Then I called my parents to let them know that Tommy and Sarah should stay there for the rest of the weekend. "Is everything all right, son?" my mother asked. "Not really, Mom. Jovie and I are having some problems. I'll explain everything when I pick up the kids on Sunday." "Do you need anything? Your father and I could—" "I'm fine. Just keep the kids happy, okay? They don't need to know about any of this yet." After I hung up, I sat in my empty house and tried to figure out what came next. The legal separation would be filed tomorrow. Jovie would probably hire a lawyer and fight for custody. The neighborhood gossip would continue to spread. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. The pretending was over. The careful dance around Jovie's moods and secrets and late nights was finished. Whatever happened next, at least it would be honest. My phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. "Owen, I'm serious about staying out of my business. You don't want to make an enemy of me." This time I texted back, "Kellan." Was that a threat or a dating app pickup line? Either way, you might want to work on your delivery. He didn't respond, but I wasn't worried. Owen Martinez was about to learn that threatening a project manager who'd just lost his wife was like threatening a man who'd already lost everything that mattered. I had nothing left to lose, which made me very dangerous indeed. Sunday morning brought unexpected visitors. I was drinking coffee and reading through the separation papers David had emailed me when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Frank and Marcia Morrison standing on my front porch, looking grim and determined. I opened the door, unsure what to expect. "Frank, Marcia, come in." They stepped inside, shaking rain from their coats. The weather had turned nasty again, typical Pacific Northwest autumn, where you got about 6 hours of sunshine between storms. "We need to talk," Frank said without preamble. "About Jovie, about what happens next." We sat in the living room, the same room where Jovie and I had opened Christmas presents just 10 months ago, where the kids played video games and did homework. Now it felt like a courtroom. "First," Marcia said, "we want you to know that we're not here to defend what Jovie did. Her behavior Friday night was inexcusable." "Completely inexcusable," Frank added. "We raised her better than that." I waited, sensing there was more coming. "But," Marcia continued, "she's still our daughter, and Tommy and Sarah are our grandchildren. We're hoping we can find a way to work through this that doesn't destroy the whole family." "Jovie destroyed the family," I replied quietly. "Not me." "We know that," Frank said, "and we've told her as much. She's been crying for 2 days straight, barely eating, barely sleeping. She knows she made a terrible mistake." "Mistake?" I repeated the word, tasting its inadequacy. "Frank, she planned this. She and Owen arranged to spend time together, and Ava's party game gave them cover. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment mistake." Marcia's face crumpled. "She told us about the text messages. We made her show us everything. Then you know this wasn't just about Friday night?" "We know," Frank said heavily. "And we've told her that if she wants any chance of saving her marriage, she needs to cut all contact with this Owen character and get into counseling immediately." "It's too late for that." "Is it?" Marcia leaned forward. "Kellan, you've been part of our family for 12 years. You're a good man, a good father. And despite what she did, Jovie is a good mother. Those kids need both their parents." "They'll have both their parents, just not in the same house." Frank and I stared at each other across the coffee table. Two men who'd never been particularly close but had always maintained mutual respect. He'd been a cop for 30 years before retiring. He understood consequences and accountability better than most people. "What would it take?" he asked finally. "What would Jovie have to do to make this right?" I thought about it seriously, because I owed them that much. She'd have to admit what she did publicly. Apologize to everyone who witnessed her behavior Friday night. Cut all contact with Owen permanently. Submit to alcohol counseling. Give me primary custody of the kids while she gets her life together. And even then, you're not sure you could forgive her. Even then, I'm not sure I could trust her. And without trust, there's no marriage." Marcia started crying quietly. Frank put his arm around her shoulders. "We understand," he said. "We don't like it, but we understand." They left a few minutes later, and I spent the rest of the morning cleaning the house and preparing for Tommy and Sarah to come home. Whatever was happening between their mother and me, they deserved stability and normalcy. Around noon, my phone rang. David Brennan. "I've got some news," he said. "Jovie hired Rebecca Walsh to represent her." I knew the name. Walsh was a family law attorney with a reputation for aggressive tactics and expensive bills. What does that mean for us? It means Jovie is taking this seriously, and she's got good representation. Walsh already called me this morning, fishing for information about our strategy. "What did you tell her?" "Nothing, of course. But she did make it clear that they're going to fight the custody arrangement. Walsh thinks she can paint you as vindictive and controlling." "Based on what?" "Based on the fact that you documented everything Friday night instead of trying to stop Jovie or talk her out of participating in the game. She's going to argue that you set your wife up to fail so you could use it against her later." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. "That's ridiculous." "Maybe, but it's not completely without merit. You did take a very methodical approach to gathering evidence." "Because I knew she was making a huge mistake and I wanted to protect myself and my kids." "I know that, and you know that. But a judge might see it differently, especially if Walsh can make you look calculating and cold." We talked for another 10 minutes about strategy and next steps. The separation hearing was scheduled for Thursday morning. Walsh would probably request joint custody and argue that Jovie's behavior was an isolated incident fueled by alcohol and poor judgment. "The key," David said, "is going to be demonstrating a pattern of behavior, not just one bad night. The text messages help, but we need more." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and tried to think of what other evidence might exist. Jovie's social media posts, maybe? Her credit card statements? Had she been meeting Owen for coffee or lunch? Her work schedule? Had she been staying late for legitimate reasons or to spend time with him? Before I could dig too deeply, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Unknown. This is Owen's wife, Catherine. We need to talk. Can you meet me at Riverside Park in an hour? Owen's wife. I hadn't even known he was married. I texted back, I'll be there. Riverside Park was a small green space about halfway between our neighborhood and downtown Millbrook. When I arrived, I found a woman in her early 30s sitting on a bench near the playground, staring at the river that gave the park its name. She was pretty in an understated way. Brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, minimal makeup, wearing jeans and a rain jacket that had seen better days. She looked tired and sad and angry all at once. Catherine? She looked up. You must be Kellan. Thank you for coming. I sat down beside her on the bench. I didn't know Owen was married. Most people don't. We've been separated for 6 months, but we're not divorced yet. He moved here to get away from me and our problems in Portland. I'm sorry. Don't be. Our marriage was over long before your wife came along. She turned to look at me directly. But I thought you should know that Jovie isn't Owen's first affair. He has a pattern. She pulled out her phone and showed me a series of screenshots, text conversations between Owen and various women, social media messages, even some photos that made my stomach turn. He targets married women, Catherine continued, women who are unhappy or lonely or just looking for excitement. He's very good at making them feel special and desired, and he's very good at convincing them that their husbands don't appreciate them. How long has this been going on? Years. I finally figured it out about 8 months ago when I found messages on his laptop. That's when I threw him out. She showed me more evidence. Credit card statements showing charges at hotels and restaurants, phone records showing late-night calls to multiple women, even a private investigator's report she'd commissioned. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because you seem like a decent guy who got caught up in my husband's games, and because I want Owen to face consequences for once in his life. What kind of consequences? I'm filing for divorce next week, and I'm going to make sure every woman in your neighborhood knows exactly what kind of man Owen Martinez is. I'm going to post his dating profiles, his text messages, everything. I want him to be as humiliated as he's made me. I thought about Jovie, crying at her parents' house, probably still believing that Owen cared about her. Can I get copies of some of this evidence? For my custody case? Absolutely. In fact, I was hoping you'd ask. We spent the next hour going through her documentation. Catherine had been thorough, more thorough than even I had been. She had proof that Owen had been pursuing multiple women simultaneously, including Jovie. She had evidence of his lies about his job, his finances, even his living situation. He told Jovie he was single and successful, I said, reading through the messages. He told all of them that. Meanwhile, he's behind on child support, his credit cards are maxed out, and he's living in that rental house because he can't afford to buy anything. Child support? We have a 4-year-old daughter. Owen sees her every other weekend when it's convenient for him. The picture of Owen Martinez that emerged from Catherine's evidence was ugly. A serial cheater who preyed on vulnerable women and abandoned his responsibilities as a father and husband. Jovie had fallen for a complete fraud. I should hate your wife, Catherine said as we prepared to leave. But honestly, I just feel sorry for her. Owen is very convincing when he wants to be. That doesn't excuse what she did. No, it doesn't. But it might help explain it. I drove home with a flash drive full of evidence and a clearer picture of what had really happened. Jovie hadn't just made a mistake. She'd been manipulated by an expert. That didn't forgive her behavior, but it did make me understand it better. And it gave me exactly the kind of pattern evidence David said we needed to win the custody case. Owen Martinez was about to learn that actions have consequences, and so was my wife. The custody hearing was scheduled for Thursday morning, but Tuesday brought an unexpected development that changed everything. I was at work, reviewing blueprints for a highway overpass project, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Jovie's number. Hello, Jovie. Kellan, we need to talk. Something's happened. Her voice sounded different, smaller, more fragile than I'd heard in years. What kind of something? Can you meet me at the house, please? It's important. Against my better judgment, I told my foreman I'd be back in an hour and drove home. I found Jovie sitting at our kitchen table, her laptop open in front of her. She looked terrible, pale, hollow-eyed, like she hadn't slept in days. "What's this about?" I asked, remaining standing. She turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was a Facebook post from Kellan Martinez, Owen's wife. The post was long, detailed, and devastating. To the women of Maple Ridge Estates and surrounding neighborhoods. I want you to know what kind of man Owen Martinez really is. What followed was a methodical destruction of Owen's character, complete with screenshots of his dating profiles, examples of his lies to multiple women, and evidence of his financial irresponsibility. Kellan had even included photos of their daughter with a caption about how Owen had abandoned his family to pursue affairs with married women. The post had been shared dozens of times already, and the comments were brutal. Women from all over the area were responding with their own stories about Owen's behavior. "She contacted me yesterday," Jovie said quietly. "Kellan. She wanted me to know that I wasn't the only one. And she showed me everything, all of it, the other women, the lies, the way he targets people like me." Jovie started crying again, but these tears seemed different from the manipulative ones I'd seen before. "I was so stupid, Kellan. So incredibly stupid." "Yes, you were." She flinched at my bluntness, but didn't argue. "He told me you didn't appreciate me, that you took me for granted, that I deserved better. And you believed him. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel special and desired and young again." I sat down across from her, studying her face. "What do you want from me, Jovie? An absolution? Forgiveness? What?" "I want to make this right. I want to save our marriage." "You can't." "Please, Kellan. I know I messed up terribly, but—" "You didn't mess up. You made a series of deliberate choices over several weeks that led to you leaving a party with another man while our neighbors watched. That's not a mistake. That's a betrayal." She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. "What happens now?" "Now you face the consequences. The custody hearing is Thursday. Your lawyer will argue for joint custody, and my lawyer will argue that you've demonstrated poor judgment and shouldn't have unsupervised access to our children. You really think I'm a bad mother? I think you're a mother who made choices that put your desires ahead of your family's well-being. The court will decide what that means for custody." My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it and couldn't help smiling. "What?" Jovie asked. I showed her the message, which was from Owen. "Owen, your wife ruined my life. I hope you're happy." Apparently, Kellan's Facebook post is having the desired effect. Jovie read the message and shook her head. He's blaming me for his wife exposing him? Owen Martinez doesn't take responsibility for anything. That's what Kellan's been trying to tell people. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Outside, I could hear kids playing in the neighborhood, normal sounds of normal families living normal lives. "I've been thinking about what you said," Jovie said eventually. "About trust, about how some things can't be fixed. And you're right. I broke something that can't be repaired. I know that now." It was the first completely honest thing she'd said to me in months. "So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to tell Rebecca Walsh that I won't fight the custody arrangement. You should have primary custody of Tommy and Sarah. I'll take whatever visitation the court thinks is appropriate." I stared at her in surprise. "Why?" "Because they need stability, and you can provide that better than I can right now. Because I need time to figure out who I am and what I want. And because—" She paused, struggling with the words. "Because it's the right thing to do. This doesn't change anything between us, Jovie. We're still getting divorced." "I know, but maybe we can do it without destroying each other completely." After she left, I called David Brennan to let him know about the development. He was as surprised as I was. It's unusual for someone to concede custody without a fight, especially when they have decent representation. Maybe she finally understands the situation she's in. Maybe. Or maybe her lawyer advised her that fighting would only make things worse. Either way, it makes our job much easier. Thursday's hearing was anticlimactic. Rebecca Walsh stood before the judge and formally conceded that primary custody should go to me, with Jovie receiving supervised visitation every other weekend pending completion of alcohol counseling. The judge accepted the arrangement and scheduled a follow-up hearing for 6 months out to review the situation. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt something I hadn't expected. Sadness. Not for the end of my marriage. That had been inevitable from the moment Jovie walked out of Ava Henderson's patio door. But for the waste of it all. 12 years, 2 children, a life we'd built together, all thrown away for an hour with a man who turned out to be a complete fraud. That evening, I picked up Tommy and Sarah from my parents' house and brought them home. They were 7 and 9, old enough to sense that something was wrong, but too young to understand the full scope of what had happened. "Where's Mommy?" Sarah asked as I tucked her into bed. "Mommy's staying with Grandma and Grandpa Morrison for a while. She and Daddy need some time apart to work through some grown-up problems." "Are you getting divorced?" The question hit me like a punch to the chest. 9 years old, and she already understood that much. "We might be, sweetheart, but no matter what happens between Mommy and me, we both love you and Tommy very much. That will never change." She nodded solemnly, processing this information with the gravity that children bring to life-altering news. "Is it because of the party?" I froze. "What do you know about the party?" "Jessica's mom was talking to Mrs. Chen about it. She said Mommy did something bad. The neighborhood gossip had reached the kids. Of course it had. Mommy made some poor choices, yes, but the important thing is that you and Tommy are safe and loved, and that's not going to change." After both kids were asleep, I sat in my living room and tried to process everything that had happened in the past week. A marriage ended, a family broken apart, a neighborhood scandal that would be talked about for years. And somewhere across town, Owen Martinez was probably packing his bags, getting ready to move on to the next community where he could find new victims. But this time, he'd leave behind a trail of evidence and angry women who wouldn't stay quiet. Catherine Martinez had made sure of that. My phone buzzed with one final text message. "Unknown. You win. I'm leaving town. Your wife wasn't worth